Senator Scullion.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Conroy. I refer the Minister to the fact that illegal boats are now arriving at a rate of 1,000 times greater than when Mr Rudd became Prime Minister. Does the Minister now accept that Prime Minister Rudd's decision to abolish the Howard Government's successful border protection policies was a catastrophic mistake, and does the government still stand by its support for this decision?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Conroy.
Thank you, Mr President. As I said, faced with the opportunity, clearly sometime on Friday, as it was in Saturday's paper, Mr Morrison had the chance to endorse, Mr President, the Howard Government policy agenda. And Mr President, faced with that, he refused to outline how the policy would be implemented, except to say it would not. A direct contradiction.
Order.
A direct contradiction.
Senator Conroy, resume your seat. Senator Scullion.
A point of order on relevance, Mr President. My question was very clear, was not particularly wide-ranging. It simply asked that does the government still stand by the support for the decision that led to the catastrophic outcome of a 1,000-fold increase in the amount of boats arriving? I wonder if you could draw his attention to the question.
Order. The Minister has been only going for 28 seconds. The Minister still has 1:32. I'm listening closely to the Minister's answer, and I draw the Minister's attention to the question. The Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. I can understand, Mr President, why the questioner just completely reworded his question on his feet then, to avoid mentioning the Howard Government policies, to avoid mentioning it in his point of order. Because what we know about the Howard Government policies, Mr President, what we know is that what Mr Barry, the former Defence Chief Admiral Chris Barry, said turning back boats are not fair to the Navy and will mean asylum seekers will simply sink the boats. So we stand by our policy agenda here. We stand by the expert panel on asylum seekers that reported on the 13th of August and put forward a range of measures. But Mr President, Senator Scullion cannot airbrush out of his question his reference to Mr Howard's policies, because what did the Defence Chief Admiral say? You can imagine that the opposition in government might be able to secure an arrangement with Indonesia. And what did Mr Barry say? It's filthy, dirty work for the Navy. It's filthy, dirty work for the Navy. Of course it's traditional. He went on to say the engines had to be rebuilt because they were destroyed as soon as the boats sighted one of our vessels. And he said, you put all of that into the equation and you ask yourself, what are asylum seeker boats going to do? If this is the policy, a return to the Howard Government as championed by those opposite, Mr President, when they sight one of our vessels on the high seas.
Time's expired. Order. Time's expired. Senator Scullion.
I remind the Minister that the first public commitment the Prime Minister made following her political execution of the former Prime Minister Rudd was, I understand the Australian people want strong management of our borders and I will provide it. After 44,219 illegal arrivals on 724 boats, does the Minister believe that the Prime Minister has delivered on that commitment?
Order. Order. The Minister.
Thank you. Mr President, those opposite, truly, when it comes to this issue, are the ultimate hypocrites and ultimate cynics. The Houston Government expert panel put forward a range of recommendations. We committed to every single one of them. The government, the party, has not always supported all of those positions. But those over there, Mr President, are more interested in cheap politics than they are the facts of how to stop people and how to stop refugees getting on boats and risking their lives. Because what did Mr Barry also say this morning, Mr President? He said, I think we're going to see a lot more of the sinking of boats and other issues. And I don't think that's really fair on our people who have to go out and do this job. So the man who was actually in charge has called it filthy, dirty work. and says it's not going to work. I don't think that's really fair on our people. I think we're going to see a lot more sinking of the boat.
Time's
Mr.
expired.
President.
Time's expired. Senator Conroy. Senator Scullion.
Thanks, Mr. President. I also remind the Minister of the Prime Minister's catch cry when Shadow Minister for Immigration of another boat, another policy failure. Given that since the 24th of June in 2010, the day that Ms Gillard formally executed former Prime Minister Rudd, 585 boats carrying 37,667 people have arrived. Why should the Australian people have any confidence in a Prime Minister who, according to her own test, has had 585 policy failures in the last 3 years?
Time has expired. Order. 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 Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. A set of proposals that contained some very tough measures, Mr. President, were put forward. Those opposite continue to refuse to support the implementation of them because they don't want to solve this problem, Mr. President. Those opposite want to keep
Senator
playing
Conroy,
politics.
just resume your seat. Now, when we have silence, we'll proceed. Senator Conroy.
Those opposite, Mr. President, want to keep playing politics. And while they're playing politics, Mr. President, lives are being lost. People are jumping on unsafe boats and seeking to come to Australia. If they were being returned to Malaysia, the incentive would shut down the people smuggling business. Mr. President, a Malaysian solution would have seen that trade brought to an end, and yet those opposite, for nothing but cowardly, manipulative political reasons, they're not prepared to introduce it.
Time's expired.